Starting with its first school in Stuttgart in 1919, Waldorf education has spread all over the globe with already more than 1,000 schools worldwide. In Germany, Waldorf schools are highly sought after, with long waiting lists common in several places. I am your host Paras Mehta, and this time on India to Germany, we speak with Nora Windeck, co-founder of Steiner School in Dublin, about Waldorf school education in Germany. Originally from Berlin, Nora is an award-winning filmmaker who has worked for Berlinale and Edinburgh film festivals and has won numerous accolades for her short films, art installations, and music videos. Welcome, Nora. Thank you for speaking with us.
Hi, welcome. Hi.
So, Nora, you are the co-founder of the Dublin Steiner School. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your association with Waldorf education?
Sure, yeah. I was lucky enough to go to Steiner kindergarten, primary school, and secondary school myself.
Oh, nice.
This was in Berlin and a few years in southern Germany. And the schools I went to were already very well established. This was in the 80s, 90s. And both schools I went to were really big schools of about 800, 900 children. This is from kindergarten up to secondary school. And I started kindergarten when I was 4 and then started primary school with class 1 when I was 6. And I finished my schooling there as well with the Abitur, which is the German qualification which you need if you want to go to university. So I finished my formal schooling there as well, and I went on to university and studied literature and history. And so after that, it was just a normal, university education. Yeah.
And now you have also set up the Dublin Steiner School. So I guess that way you kind of stay in touch with Waldorf education at the moment as well.
Very much so, very much so. It really started when I had my daughter and we were looking at kindergartens at schools. And there was a Steiner kindergarten, but there was no Steiner primary school at the time. And Ireland is quite specific in the way that about 95% of primary schools are run by the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And the very, very few state-run schools are very overprescribed because a lot of people want to send their children there. So you basically have to put down your child's name on the day the child is born. Otherwise, you won't get a place, and there's very long waiting lists and everything. Uh-huh. So that was one of the reasons why we said, let's do it. And we founded the school. And there was, as I said, already an established Steiner kindergarten. So there was a really strong group of parents who were very determined to set this up. And so we did it. So we're in our 4th year now.
All right.
And we started, the first year we had 7 children. And the second year we had 2. And this year we have 16 in total. So that's over 4 classes.
Great.
Yeah, so we're definitely growing. So it's definitely going really well.
And why is it that you decided to set up a Steiner school specifically and not a normal private school, let's say?
Well, it was with my background that, because I went to a Steiner school, this was just definitely something that I wanted for my children as well. And so did the other parents. Because as I said, the kindergarten was already there. So a lot of people knew about the ethos and what the school was about. So we were just not too happy with what we saw in other schools, in other primary schools, and we thought we definitely want this for our children. So.
Okay. So yeah, that makes me very curious. What exactly is a Waldorf school?
In general, Steiner schools form the largest group of independent, non-denominational schools in the world, which means non-religious schools. Okay. Many are state-funded. The first school in Germany was opened in 1919, so that was a long time ago, for the children of factory workers for Waldorf Astoria, the cigar factory. This is where the name Waldorf comes from. This is where they're also sometimes called Waldorf schools. And at the moment, there's about 1,000 schools worldwide. So it's a huge established school model. The priority of the Steiner ethos, I would say, is to provide an unhurried, a creative learning environment where the children can find joy in learning and experience the richness, the variety of childhood experiences, rather than early specialization or, what we'd now call academic hothousing. The lesson content and its method of presentation are linked to what we see as the child's emotional, social, physical, and intellectual development. So it's really a holistic way of looking at the child and go with the child at a pace that respects the child developmental journey. It just looks at where is the child in his or her development. Nothing too soon, nothing too late. A high value is placed on play in the early years and learning through play, and then in middle school, so primary school is creative thinking, and then in secondary school it's the intellectual thinking. That's
It sounds like a very nice and a creative environment, like you said, for kids. In terms of like practical implementation, what does it look like in the schools?
Well, we say that, sorry, again, this might sound a bit abstract, but we say that we educate the head, the heart, and the hands. So we believe that all three are needed to educate the child, not just the head. So formal education, which begins at 6, is introduced in a way and pace that, as I said earlier, that sort of respect the child's developmental journey. So there's a lot of drawing, painting, music, movement. All of this leads to a different way of thinking creatively, which is then used to learning and experiencing all the other subjects, really. So. And it's, of course, it's not like a free-for-all for all children. The children are very much guided and closely monitored by the teachers. So it is very much still a learning experience. It's not just, they don't just run around and play, it's very much a learning experience. Yeah.
I mean, the main question that always kind of pops up in my head is, how is this different from, let's say, a normal within quotes, like a normal school?
I think that in a way the school isn't as different from other schools as a lot of people think. We still have we have the classrooms, we have the teachers. I think that the relationship with the teacher is incredibly important. The teacher is not just a teacher in the sense that she or he brings knowledge to the children, but they're also a role model. They're a mentor, they're an educator, and they teach a large portion of the subjects. So in primary school, a lot of subjects are taught in thematic, I'd call them thematic blocks, which we call, they're called epochs, so Epochenunterricht, which means that a certain subject is taught more in depth. Okay. So for a couple of weeks, you would have in the morning 2 hours of biology or geography or reading, writing, those sort of things. And they are meant to really immerse the child into a specific subject matter. Of course, there's other lessons like language, music, craft, and things that are taught continuously by different teachers as well. The biggest difference, really, I think, is that there's no grades.
All right.
And you don't repeat classes. So if you have children with the slower learning process in specific subjects, they don't have to repeat the classes. Again, this has something to do with seeing the child as a whole and seeing all their abilities, and not, for example, just speaking of myself, I was very good at arts and languages, and I was really terrible at maths and physics.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have to repeat classes because of that. And it's sort of, I was brought through as part of my class all the way up to my Abitur, and I was still able to do that. Whereas in a different school, I probably would have failed classes, or I wouldn't have had the chance to go as far with what I was really, really good at.
Okay.
So I think that's definitely one of the main differences. Yeah.
That sounds very nice. So these kids who are like kind of late bloomers, let's say, I don't know how they're...
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So they also kind of get a chance to develop themselves later. Yeah, actually, I have seen this a lot in my own situation as well. People tend to change so much over the time of the school or the school years. That's true. Yeah. And you also mentioned that the class teacher is really important. So the class teacher is someone who kind of stays with the class for 1 year, or is it like over a period of several years?
No, it's for 8 years.
For 8 years.
Okay. It's from class 1 to 8.
All right. Okay.
So they stay with them. This has something to do with Steiner's theory of the 7 years. Is that every 7 years your body undergoes big changes, and especially in childhood. This is why children usually only start school when they're 6 or 7, because that's, according to Steiner, the age where the brain has developed in a way that children start to think more analytically. And again, then it's the 8 years until you're about 13, 14. And then you really go into the higher classes, and the teaching is much more intellectual. So that's one of the reasons why the class teacher stays with the children so long.
Okay. Yeah, and another aspect which I found very interesting that you mentioned is that music and art play such an important role in Steiner schools. Why is that so? Why put so much importance on these subjects?
As far as I know, Steiner saw, even in his time, of a development of society towards intellectual, technical jobs and away from traditional crafts and arts. But to his mind, arts and crafts are hugely important because they balance out the development of children, or really every person, really, as a whole. So from early on, it's the idea of teaching fine motor skills, gross motor skills, spatial thinking, problem solving, construction, how you perceive materials. All of this are hugely train the brain in many ways that that more intellectual subjects wouldn't. So yes, I would say, if your child is very gifted in an art, a Steiner School would be a great place for them. But that does not mean that if your child has no particular gift, you shouldn't. So as every child has abilities that are fostered. But yeah, I mean, the main thing about the art and crafts is that it's for the fine and gross motor skills of really small children. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be kind of my concern there. Okay, if my child is, let's say, good at mathematics, let's say, then...
Sure. No, every aspect of education is respected and is fostered. And it doesn't mean because there's a lot of emphasis on arts and crafts that there isn't emphasis on mathematics or physics. It's exactly the same way. If you have a talent for that, if you have a gift for that, then that is equally fostered. So it's, yeah.
All right. I mean, maybe I'm just a worried parent. But yeah, I mean, if I wonder, like, my child would not get any grades in a Steiner school. And yeah, and then he, of course, it's on the one hand, it's a very nice thing. I agree. But on the other hand, I then think, okay, how is he or she going to get some sort of feedback on their progress? So,
or you mean survive in the real world, that kind of...
Yeah, or how will they learn, sort of? I don't know. Maybe
no, yeah, of course. Of course, there is feedback. Of course, there is, especially in the upper classes, there are tests. Of course, there are tests. And it's just a very close monitoring by the teachers of the child and the child's progress. And the parents still, of course, get feedback on how their children are doing. There's regular, parent-teacher meetings, all those sort of things. And as far as, surviving later in the real world, I can really only look at my own class. When I look at the people I went to school with, and just from my class alone, we have a judge, we have lawyers, we have doctors, we have math teacher, we have a fashion designer, we have somebody who makes violins, we have a publisher, we have, it's really every aspect of life you can go into. It's not, the school doesn't shy away from preparing kids for the real world at all. On the other hand, I think it actually prepares them better for it, because it teaches self-reliance. It teaches creative thinking in a way that you can use for any obstacle that comes your way, really. So yeah.
So it's kind of that's actually, I really like the idea of this kind of holistic kind of a focus on the child.
It's more the idea of that children are being taught how to think and not just what to think. That it's not just, this is what you have to learn, so put that in your head, and then there's a test and you can regurgitate that, and that means you're clever. That's not what it should be like, I think. And that's exactly what the school promotes not to do. So it's,
That's right. And but at the end of the school, everyone, they have to pass the state exam. Let's say, I don't know, the same exam, right? So it's the same case with Waldorf as well.
Absolutely. You can do in Germany. There's 3 different kind of degrees you can get. As 3 different kind of exams you can do in school. The first one it's called Gesamtschulabschluss, which you would, I think it's after grade 10. I'm not entirely sure. Sorry, don't quote me on that. I think it's after class 10. And you can, of course, request grades. The teachers can give you grades that are on your final, on your paper. So absolutely, you can do that. Then the next one is called the Mittlere Reife, I think, which is a year later. Again, you can get your you get your grades and everything, and then you can do the Abitur, which is which you need in order to go to university. So in England that would be called the A levels, or in Ireland here it's called Leaving Certificate. So absolutely, you can do any kind of exam you need in order to then go on to whatever 3rd level education you like. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And from your experience, you have noticed that Waldorf school children or Waldorf school pupils also tend to perform well in these exams, just like other. Okay.
Yeah, very much so. I think I don't have exact numbers, but the majority of my class went all the way up to the Abitur, and then went through some form of, the 3rd level as in university So the grades the final grades are usually about the same, sometimes even better. So it's,
All right. Yes, I would just like to kind of go on record and let's say ask you about your opinion. So would you recommend Waldorf school to parents or families who are looking for a school for their child here? So would you recommend this? Do you think it has benefited you? You already mentioned a lot of things, but do you think it has benefited you professionally and personally enough that you would recommend it to everyone else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my personal experience was I loved going to school. I really loved going to school. And
nice. That's a nice thing.
It was something that I was talking to my partner here as well. He went to an all-Catholic boys' school. He hated going to school. There was still, there was still corporal punishment. He was still beaten for not doing his homework. It's I really loved going to school. I loved the community of it. It's because you're in the same class with the same people for such a long time, they really become part of your family. And I found that incredibly precious. I think for me personally, it has helped me a lot in, problem solving, dealing with people. So also just the belief, the teachers are not your enemy. Like that for me was a hugely important experience, that they're there to support you and bring out the best in you, which I find just really amazing. And I can see that now in my daughter going to school here as well. She loves going to school. She's upset when it's the weekend. It's genuinely Saturday mornings. She's like, oh, it's the weekend. Oh, okay. So like what more can you want for your child? I think
very good. Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
Oh, that's very good. And it's also very, very nice that you're kind of spreading this also. And you have set up the school as well. It's, I guess that's what, Waldorf or Steiner pedagogy needs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your experience on this
thanks very much. Yeah.
topic with us. That's all, folks. Thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe to our podcast and check out our blog on indiatogermany.com. See you in the next episode.